Hi class, for today's lesson, we're going to talk about taking charge of one's health. It is an important aspect of understanding the self is acknowledging the presence of emotions. So basically, we're going to talk about emotions here. So emotion serves as a driving force in how one acts and behave. Emotions play a part in making decisions, embracing certain lifestyles, and relating to others. However, while emotions can be immediately recognized, there's difficulty in defining them, and for some people, there's also difficulty in controlling them. However, this is not to say that emotions rule over one's rationality and become the sole basis of his or her decisions. An important point to remember here, class, is that every individual is expected to have capacity to manage his or her decisions. So the applications of emotional intelligence here, class, can be seen into different aspects of daily life, no? So at home, emotions are managed with dealing with family members, or at school, emotions are regulated in socializing with classmates and teachers, as well as motivating oneself in fulfilling his or her academic tasks. Effectively regulating your emotions also has a positive effect on one's career's goal, as emotional intelligence is a crucial criteria companies that or organization considered in assessing an employee. So in this lesson class, you will learn an important aspect of understanding the self, and that is acknowledging the presence of your emotions. No? So let's talk about human emotions and emotional intelligence. So emotion is a biological experience and response. Feelings have been defined as the mental portrayal of what is going on in your body, and when you have emotion, and is the byproduct of your brain perceiving the assigning meaning to the emotion. While emotional intelligence has defined by a number of theories. So in this, Bar on 1997 defined this as an array of non-cognitive abilities, competencies, and skills that influence one's ability to succeed in coping with environmental demands and pressures. It also includes one's capacity to regulate emotions and emotionally aware, which is helpful on one's emotional and intellectual growth. For Goldman, it is the capacity for recognizing our own feelings and those others, for motivating others, and for managing emotions effectively in ourselves. And for others, emotional intelligence is an aggregate result of both innate individual characteristics and skills people acquire and develop throughout their lifetime. Now, human emotions or human can be managed and regulated, as we mentioned a while ago, and they can be identified so that they are used within the right context. Managing emotion is an ability, and ability is something that is learned. We can learn to manage our own emotions, though. So, in regulating emotions, the capacity to be sensitive to one's emotion and those of others is also developed for self-understanding and maintaining healthy interpersonal relationships. So, with this, of course, we will talk about stress, because stress is something that uh, can trigger different states of emotional strain or mental strain resulting from adverse or very demanding circumstances. No? It is a mental and a physical response to the demands of your environment. For example, home, school, work. So we can have different kind of stress into different settings. It can be defined as any type of change that causes physical, emotional, or psychological strain. Stress is the body's response to any that or anything that requires attention or action. It is normal to feel stressed. No, again, it is normal to feel stressed. It is a universal human experience. So, what is more important is how you respond to the stress. Let me say that again. What is more important is how you respond to stress. Though stress is, it is normal to feel stress, but it is more important on how you cope with it. Not all stress is bad. In fact, stress is a good, or there is a good uh, effect of stress, no? To maintain an overall good health. The human body may tend toward a relatively stable equilibrium, especially those maintained by physiological process. Yet, it also requires stimulation to ensure optimal functioning to the organs and tissues, such as your heart and muscle. Now, there are three kinds of stress. So, we'll talk about this. So, first, you have eustress. Okay, this is considered the good stress. No? It is a result from a situation or activity that finds or you can find it motivating or inspiring. It is enjoyable and not threatening activity. For example, finding the nerve to talk to your crush. Sometimes when you're someone who you really like, there's this kind of stress that you feel, but it gives you joy, nevertheless, right? So it is good. It is considered a good stress. So that is eustress. Now, for new stress or neutral stress, no, that is why it's called new stress. That's neutral stress. A sensory stimulus that has no direct consequence or effect on the person. It is a situation or activity that you do not find threatening, yet not enjoyable. For example, incidents that you hear in news. So that is not threatening, but also it is not enjoyable. Now, we have the stress. This is a situation or activities that you consider negative, harmful, threatening, and it could happen for you just in a short time of span of time, or it could linger for prolonged periods. It could be hours, days, months, or years. So, for example, being mugged on the street or a long-standing family quarrel. Okay, so now uh, let's identify stress. Stress is not always easy to recognize, but there are some ways to identify some signs that you might be experiencing too much pressure. Sometimes stress can come from an obvious source, but sometimes even small daily stresses from work, school, family, and friends can take a toll in your mind and body. You have your uh, psychological signs such as difficulty of concentrating, worrying, anxiety, and trouble remembering. Emotional signs such as being angry, irritated, moody, or frustrated. Physical signs include high blood pressures or high blood pressure, changes in weight, frequent colds or infectious, and changes in the menstrual cycle or libido. Behavioral signs such as poor self-care, not having time for the things you enjoy, or relying on drugs or the alcohol to cope. Now, of course, if you're stressed, there's this stressor. Now, what is a stressor? It is any situation, activity, or individual that gives you mental or emotional strain. Is That's what we call stressor. Again, it is anything that gives you emotional strain or even a mental or emotional strain. So the list of stressor is not uh, only endless. It is also varies from person to person. Good stressors can make you feel both nervous and excited at the same time. So it can make you worry about being liked or accepted. On the other hand, bad stress can cause you to feel angry, petrified, or depressed. It can make you feel constantly on the edge. Other than mental and emotional strain, you can also suffer pain, such as headaches, or you can actually get sick, such as going with or going down with a fever. High levels of stress, when unattended, contribute to mental problems. Okay, so what is the stressor and its types? You have your external and internal, and under external, you have your physical environment like noise, bright lights, and heat. Organizational, like rules and deadlines. Social interactions, like rudeness, impulsiveness, aggressiveness, and bullying. Major life events, like birth, death, promotions, loss of jobs, and change of marital status. Daily hassles like misplaced keys, mechanical breakdown, traveling, and many more. For internal, you have lifestyle choices like overloaded schedules and lack of sleep, negative self-talk like self-criticism and pessimistic thinking or negative thinking, mind traps or taking things personally, exaggerations and unrealistic expectations, personality traits like perfectionist and workaholic. For the types of stress, you have your acute, episodic, and chronic stress. Acute, this is the most common type of stress. It's your body's immediate reaction to new challenges or event or demands, and it triggers your fight or flight response. Episodic, acute stress. When you're when acute stress happens frequently, it is called episodic acute stress. People who always seem to having a crisis tend to have episodic acute stress. When they are often short-tempered, irritable, and anxious. People who are worrywarts or pessimistic, or people who always worry, who tends to see the negative sides always of everything, also tends to have episodic acute stress. Now, for chronic, it is if the acute stress isn't resolved and begin to increase or less for a long period of time, it becomes chronic. This stress is constant and doesn't go away. It can stem from such things such as poverty, dysfunctional family, and unhappy marriage, and a bad job, or many more. Uh, so, what are the signs and symptoms of stress? So, stress in the body's reaction to any changes that requires an adjustment or response. The body reacts to these changes with physical, mental, and emotional responses. People handle stress differently. Symptoms of stress can vary. It can vary from one person to another because again, stress, uh, a stressor to someone might not be a stressor to someone. So people actually have uh, different things that actually stresses them or stress them. Now, so the sources and coping of stress. Now, coping coping refers to the strategies you use to deal with real or imagined problems to protect yourselves against negative emotions. It refers to adaptive um, strategies you employ in an attempt to reduce stress. It helps you control your reaction and continue with your daily activities. Coping involves putting in conscious effort to minimize or tolerate stress. Now, you have your problem focused coping. Now, problem focused coping, this targets in controlling or changing source of stress. It tackles the source of a practical manner, or it targets source in a practical manner. Strategies includes like employing problem solving techniques like time management or getting relevant social support. Now, for the emotion focused coping, this involves lowering, if not eliminating, negative emotions response like embarrassment. It is an option when the source of stress is external and beyond the person's control. Uh, Strategies may include like distraction, talking out, or verbalizing your problem, uh, prayer, and meditation. For the cognitive coping, this involves a conscious intellectual activity of managing stressful situations. You use your mind to combat stress-inducing thoughts, like again, cognitive mind. Now, we have strategies for cognitive coping. You have your refraining, first one. Refraining, this is changing the way you view experience or events, ideas, concepts, or emotions to find alternatives that are more positive. Um, Challenging negative thinking. This is questioning the rationality of your negative thoughts. You take control of your thoughts and stop negative thinking. You replace negative thoughts with a positive one or positive affirmations. Positive self-talk, sometimes referred to as a passive affirmation. You can talk to yourself in a passive manner. So this is useful to build confidence. Count to 10. So some of us, we do this, count to 10. This gives you time to gain control of your emotions. It allows you to rethink the situation and find a better coping strategy. Cost benefit analysis. This is asking how you yourself benefits your thoughts, emotions, or actions. So like you're going to question, is it worth it? Sometimes we do that, no? So we're going to ask yourself, is it worth it? That's the time that you kind of think the benefits of the things that you do. Smell the roses. It is a way of telling yourself to relax. It is about taking control. Uh, it is about taking control and taking a conscious effort to appreciate the usually neglected aspect of life. Next one, keeping the perspective or keeping perspective, breaking down your problems into little tasks and knowing which the problems need to be addressed right away as compared to those that do not need much attention. And reducing uncertainty, as the saying goes, uh, lamang ang may alam. So, iba ang may alam, di ba? So, gathering as much as information that you need and about your problems gives you gives you idea on how to solve it. It helps you gather the positive information rather than the negative ones. You using imagery or visualization. Imagery as a is a relaxation tool, guys. So you find that place in your mind where you feel happy. Remember your positive or pleasurable experience. It is more effective than combined with the. It is more effective if you're going to combine it with your breathing exercise or exercises. Visualization is also a powerful rehearsal strategy. For example, you're about to present a report to or present a report in a class. Practice in your mind. Picture yourself giving the report or presenting it. So imagine the possible questions that will be asked and how you will answer it. So for behavior coping strategies, there are ways of dealing with stress by taking actions to modify behavior. Some behavioral coping strategies, we have physical exercise, relaxation, breathing, smile, laughter, time management, social support, seeking professional help. Now, we have 24 uh, positive coping strategies for stress. So, the first one is uh, abdominal breathing and relaxation. Loss stress diet. Of course, you need to limit fats or fried foods or fast foods that actually gives you stress, physically speaking. Regular exercise is good. Downtime, of course, you need to balance fine and work. That's why we call this work-life balance. Mini breaks, 5 to 10 minutes of break or periods that can is a very useful for our body to relax. So time management, sleep hygiene, choosing a non-emotional strategies like social supports and relatedness, uh, self-nurturing, good communication, assertiveness, recreational activities, emotional release, sense of humor, and we have cognitive strategies. Uh, for example, constructing thinking or constructive thinking, distraction, task-oriented approach to a problem, acceptance, tolerance of ambiguity, consistent goals on our purpose to work to a work, positive philosophy of life, religious or spiritual life, and commitment. Now, let's talk about culture and how culture can actually affect stress or how it can affect us and the coping process that we can have. We actually have four. First, uh, cultural context shapes the kind of stressors that an individual is likely to experience. For example, Europeans find crowded places stressful because they crave privacy, while Filipinos are delighted to see a crowd. So, in this context, we can see different uh, or one scenario but different cultures. You have your Europeans and you have your Filipino or Filipino culture. So European actually hates crowded places if this stresses them, while Filipinos, again, this is not generally speaking, all right, majority and by culture only. So while Filipinos are delighted to see a crowd, like that's why we really enjoy mga events. You know? So culture may also affect the appraisal of certain events. For instance, noise is stressful, but what kind of noise? Some people find the Philippine streets with all the honking, pedaling, and shouting noisy, yet they have no problem listening to their songs on high volume. So it can be considered noise if again if you're going to hear different uh, sounds on the street. But if you're listening to music, even if it's in high volume, it's okay. Okay. So culture affect also on individual's coping strategies. Culture provides different time-honored tools or mechanism by which an individual can cope with stress. So what is social stress? We sometimes or we actually have this social stress because again it is we are or humans are a social being. So social stress is a state of mental or emotional strain or tension resulting from adverse or very demanding circumstances arising from a person's social environment relationship. There are several sources of social stress, and they can affect almost every area in your life. Social stress gets aggravated when you have the capability to change your circumstances. So, what are the sources of social stress? Social stress uh, source are but not limited to problems with work or earning an income, parenting, education, sex and socialization, immigration status or language, personal, physical, and psychological health, peer pressure, and social marginalization. Social status is seen as a common denominator of social stress. For example, if you are poor, it usually means having less income opportunities, while uh, while For example, if you're poor, it usually means having less income opportunities, lower quality of education, or decreased access to problem health. While if you're rich, of course, you don't have this problem. So these problems typically contribute to problems in interpersonal relationships, such as marriage and in parenting. So numerous problems that people in the lower status could evoke a feeling of powerlessness. While if you have a higher status, powerlessness is not an issue. So being unable to change his or her situation makes the person more susceptible to stress. So we have three primary types of suicide. Now we're going to talk about suicide here because being stressed sometimes leads to suicide. This is the one of the results of being stressed, especially if if you're not able to cope up with any or the stress that you're having. So first, you have your egoistic suicide. This occurs when a person feels he or she is not accepted by or does not belong to society. The social bond is very weak. You have your altruistic suicide. It occurs when a person ends his or her life for others. So the last one is the anomic suicide. Is linked to disillusionment and disappointment. So you have two major types of stressors. You have your life event and chronic strain. For life events, important specific experience that interrupt an individual's usual activity, routine that he or she needs to. For chronic problems that have been occurring for some time, the person's social role is strained and threatening. Again, this is the two major types of stressors according to Anishan Cell 1992. Common types of role strain. Uh, First, you have your role overload. When we talk about role overload, the role demands on an individual exceeds his or her capacity to handle. For example, you are a working student or a single parent. You are shuffling roles as a student and a worker and a parent and a breadwinner. So you have different roles, and that might uh, be a problem if you are unable to handle it properly. So, or it is beyond your capacity to handle. Next, you have your interpersonal conflict within role sets. So these are problems and difficulties that arise in a relationship. Like for example, like wife and husband, parent, child, and worker and the supervisor. Interrole conflict. Demands of two or more roles held by a person are incompatible, and the demands cannot simultaneously be met. For example, as a working student, your work shift suddenly changed, and this ran in conflict with your class schedule. I believe uh, most of you are working students, and you've actually experienced this. So, like for example, we have an exam or a quiz, and the schedule of work actually changed or does not fit, so it does not fit with the schedule of your work. So that actually provides you problem, or it stresses you in a way. So role for the last one, role structuring. Uh, Long-established patterns undergo considerable change, and the person needs to adopt or adjust. For example, as an adult, you now find yourself supporting and caring for your aging parents, right? So because they have no capacity to live independently. So uh, before, your parents support you, but now since they are old, and it's now the time for you to provide for them. So that is role restructuring. The role is restructuring your family. So basically, guys, That is for the lecture for today.